I'm going to introduce my mentor. Excited to have him to talk to you. I am going to ask you one thing, Tom, though, if you wouldn't mind spending a few minutes going through the market. They hear me talking the market every week. I think it'd be great if they heard another opinion on it. And I know everybody would be excited to hear your views on Bitcoin and crypto. I know you've been involved in it since the very beginning. You had a vision of it long before I did. I was real skeptical at the beginning, and you were already involved. So if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those things, really appreciate it. So with that, I'm very honored to introduce Tom Gentile.
Awesome, Rob. Thank you very much for having me on the program. Now, Rob, you had asked me to give you some comments on Bitcoin and Ethereum and the entire cryptocurrency markets. It's no secret in my community that I was mining this stuff back in 2013. We saw it coming out of that early phase, and I was getting into it at about a year before the early phase ended. And what I'm talking about is I'm talking about phases. And I want to show everybody phases. And then we're going to get into where I think this is going. So these are what I call the crypto tables that we were looking at. I've been in all three of these phases. You got the early adoption cycle that started in 2011 and ended in 2014. That took BTC from $5 to $1,200. That was a 240x return, right? Then you got the retail cycle. Retail cycle started in 2015 to 2018. In the retail cycle, we dropped down to 152 for a low on BTC, but then up as high as 20,000, which was a 120x. So if you use the law of diminishing x's, 240 becomes 120, 120 becomes 60, and 60 was our estimate, from 1,200 to 152, from 20,000 to 3,300, from 69,000 to 15,500. Those are all, roughly 80%, give or take a few points, pullbacks from highs to low. So the big question on everybody's mind, and of course it's on mine too, is has the bottom for Bitcoin occurred? So Rob, you were talking about the halving cycle, and I'm not going to get into it in scientific detail because, Rob, as well as I know, science and analysis does not make money. I'm going to take this and kind of truncate it down as short as I can. So a halving cycle is basically, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to make it as easy and prehistoric as possible, is that Bitcoin, think about gold. All right, if you have a certain square, let's call it a square mile, and you're mining gold, and there's gold veins in that square mile. Well, maybe using the pickaxe, you're able to get to the first part. It's pretty easy. But then you got to get some heavy duty equipment and get down even harder. And then what you find out is that, now I can't see it, but I know the microscopic pieces are there. So you're going to run that through a mill. What I'm talking about is the difficulty to get gold out of one area becomes harder and harder and harder as you've already mined it. Digitally, it's the same thing. When Bitcoin started back in, late 2008, early 2009, it was very easy to get coin because it was mathematical equations. And as those mathematical equations were solved, you were rewarded. And then the next mathematical equation was a little bit harder, where you can imagine between, where we are now. We're now entering 2023. And so we're 14 years in, 14 to 15 years in from the very first Bitcoins that were mined. The equations are much, much harder. And since then, the difficulty rating, not only difficulty rating, but the rewards have been halved. So when I started mining, they were 50. They immediately got halved to 25. So you're still having to solve these huge equations, but now you're only getting 25 Bitcoin as a reward. And then that moved to 12 and a half and moved to six and a quarter. And now we're going to be having into the threes. And so if you take a look and you look at, and what we did was we drew a vertical line on a chart where each halving actually happened. I want to share that with everybody now. So this was back into just before 2013. Okay, you'll see the first half. Then you see the next halving that happened right around mid 2016. This area here, this actually happened just after 2020. And then the halving we're expected to get to next is going to be just after 2024. We're thinking it's going to happen around April 2024. Now, take a look at what we see. The vertical line was the actual halving, but go back and you'll see 12 months prior, bottom, 11 months prior, bottom, 17 months prior, bottom. This says question mark months. Okay, a lot of people are looking at that. If you're looking at this, if you're viewing this on an iPhone right now, you might think that says 7. No, that's a question mark. And the question mark is, when are we going to bottom? If you take 12, 11, 17, you put those together, that's about 14 months roughly. All right, 14 months before the halving. So if we take ourselves back 14 months before April, that puts us somewhere in February of this year. Now, what we do is we're going to actually take a standard deviation and go a few months forward, a few months behind. Basically, what I'm saying is that if history repeats itself, folks, then the bottom is either already happened or it's most likely going to happen by the end of Q1 of this year, which we are now 2.5 months away from. So you can think about this too. Let's add a couple other things on here. You notice all the bad news that's coming out on Bitcoin, and yet it's not going down anymore. I mean, what has there been a day where the word Sam Bankman-Fried has not been discussed on mainstream media?
It's interesting that you say that, Tom, because I actually talked about that, because I do look at Bitcoin every week when I do our insiders meeting, and I made the exact same point: is can anything more negative come out about Bitcoin and it has stopped going down? So I'm happy to hear you say that, because I was feeling kind of the same way, and your explanation on the halving put a lot of lights on for me. I can totally understand it now. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people wonder, is it too late to get into Bitcoin? And how do you hedge it? Well, Bitcoin's one of those the best assets to go in with, because you can spend as little money as possible. I think you could actually buy the fractional Bitcoin. Bitcoin can be fractionalized down 8 decimal places to the right. So you can buy a small fraction of that. And so it's whatever risk you're willing to take in the coin. Okay. So if we take a couple quick shots at Bitcoin and Ethereum, this is what we're seeing right now. So this is a 75-day chart. And what I did was I took a look at, we already know what it did in 2022. So let's take a look and see what happened with the last catastrophic event. And that was the demise of FTX. So as you can see, Bitcoin went from about 20, we were starting to move higher, 21, I think 21.3, 21.4, and in a matter of 4 days, we were down to 15.5. 15.5 became a double bottom, and we stayed in what I call the red quadrant of what we're looking at here. All right. So guess what? Yesterday we hit the yellow quadrant, and today we are deep into the yellow quadrant. And if we get above 19.2, that's my number on Bitcoin, where we're going to see the next real resistance. We get above 19.2, folks, and we're now into what we call the green quadrant, where we should now start to expect to see higher highs and lower highs. So call it the wave count, Rob. The wave count should start to move higher.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Go ahead. You were thinking that too?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you're going through that.
So check this out. Ethereum looks even stronger. So if Bitcoin is in the yellow part of the quadrant, take a look at where Ethereum is since the collapse of FTX. So FTX collapsed down, FTX collapsed, Ethereum drops down to 1101. Right, it double bottomed, and it started to actually create higher lows and higher highs. It's all the way through. Again, it also is on the upper end, and it touched the 61.8% retracement level from its high to low during that 4-day FTX plunge. And so, to me, I think the future looks very bright for both these two assets and the altcoins that are beneath them.
If you like these recordings, I'd like to invite you to join our new Trade Finder Live, where each and every week we do a live webinar where we talk about the market, but we also go a little more in depth into the technical analysis system that we utilize to forecast where the market's likely going to go, and also to identify trading opportunities. Get your free subscription today. Take care, everybody.